What's up, everybody? Happy Friday Eve. Welcome to The Sweat. I'm your host, Jessie Coffield. We're covering all the sports today, folks. Tonight's NLCS Game 5, the 3-game NBA slate, a juicy 10-game NHL lineup. We're even going to talk some college football Week 8 with resident expert Julian Edlow. But before all that, you know the drill. It's Thursday night. So that means we've got another chance for you to win $1 million and get an entry to the Tournament of Champions for a shot at, you guessed it, another $1 million prize. So $15 entry for the showdown tonight between the Broncos and the Browns. And to get us ready for the game, to get your lineups ready, let's welcome in our NFL panel. Howdy, DraftKings contributors Pierce Dietrich, Kenny Ducey, and Jeff Ulrich. Let's get your best DFS and sportsbook plays for Denver at Cleveland. So Pierce, who are you putting in the captain spot?
Well, if it wasn't for DFS, this would be a tough game to watch tonight. And I'm going with the Broncos defense. We know Hunt's out. We know Chubb's out. We know Baker Mayfield's out. Landry's been out. But the bigger issue is the Browns' offensive line has 3 questionable players coming into this game. They might not play either. And if they do, they're hobbled, and they're going to protect a backup quarterback that just found out he was going to play, that doesn't have running backs against the Broncos defense that's underperformed thus far, but they should step it up. Their pass rush has been decent. They're going to be in a good spot. The Browns lean heavily on the play action. Well, no one's going to fall for the play action with Ernest running the ball back there. The DBs can stay back in coverage. No one's going to be open. That's going to put more pressure on Case Keenum. I love the Broncos defense here.
All right, Kenny, who do you love in the captain spot?
Yeah, I got to go with Courtland Sutton at $10,000. You know, he has 53 targets so far this season, and that ranks him just outside the top 10 in targets in total, in the NFL. And this is a guy that is just a physical attacker of the ball, high points it. When you look at this Browns secondary, I mean, this is a terrible, terrible unit. Pierce went into all the issues the Browns have tonight on the offensive side of the ball, but we're not even talking about how bad this secondary is. I mean, I know Justin Herbert's good, but that game where they gave up 400 yards to Justin Herbert, I mean, they are just leaving people wide open, blown coverage everywhere. It's not like a situation with my Jets where it's like you just have guys that can't play the position, that can't catch up with guys that are, committing penalties on defensive pass interference because they can't get there. They're just simply not communicating out there, playing awful defense. So I just think for that reason, the Broncos have, and the fact that, Cleveland's been pretty good against the run, they have no reason not to throw the football 50 times here with Teddy Bridgewater. So I think that this is a big passing attack that I want to look at, and I think Courtland Sutton here is going to be the guy I want to start it off with. He's $10,000 in the flex, much more money in the captain spot, but I still think it's worth paying up here because there's a decent amount of value options.
All right, Jeff, who you put in your captain spot?
Yeah, I have the same sort of way of looking at this game as Kenny. I'm just going to go with Noah Fant instead at $12,300. A, he's cheaper, and B, he's playing like every snap. I mean, this is a very consistent player. Now, the big play option maybe is better with Sutton, and you say, well, you should chase that upside. But the one thing the Browns do well is bring pressure. And I think, Fant, just his reliability, he doesn't necessarily, he's only averaging like 10 yards per catch. It's not anything fancy, but the connection with Bridgewater is clearly there, over 10 targets in 2 of his last 3 games right now. And one other reason why we're looking for players to trust in this game, and it's few and far between, but even if Bridgewater doesn't play, or let's say he lasts like a quarter, at least you got Drew Lock there. And Drew Lock doesn't sound all that great, but it sounds better than what the Browns are rolling out this tonight, right? With no tackles, Case Keenum.
He's a good quarterback.
And Ernest goes to camp, Johnson, right? So I like Noah Fant here. I think he's one of the few players you feel like you can trust in this game, and he's cheap too.
All right, Kenny, you're paying up a little for your captain, so what's your best value play for the Showdown contest?
Yeah, well, look, I do agree with Jeff here that Drew Lock is a good option behind Teddy Bridgewater. No matter who starts or who plays, I'm feeling good about the Denver Broncos passing attack. So for that reason, I'm going to go with Kendall Hinton at $2,000. This is a guy that the Broncos are starting to trust a little bit. He had 5 targets last week. I know that everyone knows him because he was a meme last year when he started at quarterback for the Broncos and completed 2 passes or something. But he's actually a pretty decent receiver. He's been making some decent catches in the last couple of weeks, been pretty surprising. So I think that here at $2,000, again, you know what unit you want to rock with, right? You want to go with the Denver Broncos passing attack. I think this is a pretty good way to get a piece of it. And again, fit Courtland Sutton in there. Courtland Sutton doesn't seem so expensive if you can get Kendall Hinton in there as well. He has speed. He has some hands that work. So I think that, fire him up.
All right, Jeff, how about you? Value play for the Showdown contest.
I mean, I really want to talk about one of the kickers here, but again, we're an early morning show. I don't want people to go back to sleep here. So let's just go with Rashard Higgins. I get it. It's Case Keenum, but all things considered, like Higgins here at the flex, 3,600, it's just too cheap not to take a chance with what is basically the wide receiver one. Playing more snaps than Odell Beckham. Odell Beckham, last I looked, still questionable, may not even play in this game. And it's just a situation with Beckham right now where I don't think the Browns want to play him anyways. So they're probably going to be looking for excuses to keep him off the field. Higgins should lead the team here in snaps, probably going to lead them in targets too. He's 3,600. Like, you just need a couple plays downfield and what's probably going to be like a 17-14 game anyways. So I think he rates out as a very good value player. Well, in terms of this game, a very good value play.
All right, Pierce, your best value play for the Showdown contest.
I don't care if I put people to sleep. I'm playing the kicker, Brandon McManus. You got to take the kicker. I mean, look at the way this game should play out. These offenses aren't that great. No one I know these guys love the Denver offense, but the Browns defense isn't that bad. Yeah, the secondary struggles, but the pass rush is pretty good. I think the Broncos will move the ball, but whether or not they complete drives is another case. And you look at McManus, 10 for 10 this year from field goal range, or from the 40 range. He's 4 for 4. He's perfect, 13 of 13 from extra points. They're playing on the road. They're playing a decent team, and the Broncos offense really isn't that great. It struggled some here as well. So I'm going to take the field goal kicker. I think this is definitely going to be a kicker-type game.
All right, Pierce, not afraid to shy away from putting people to sleep on this show. I love that journey for us. How about your favorite player prop on this one? Move us to the sportsbook side, Jeff.
Yeah, player prop, I'm going to go with Noah Fant. I'm going to go back to Noah Fant here. I mean, this is the one player I do feel like you can trust a little bit in this game, and he's got a really low receiving prop. It's 42.5 yards. Let's take the over here. Again, this is a player who he has moved into. He's not just like he's not sharing snaps. He's playing every single down for the Broncos. And yeah, they have Cortland Sutton, but Noah Fant is essentially acting as their wide receiver too right now, which you absolutely love for fantasy. You can respect it. Yes, he's not like Mark Andrews. He's not necessarily getting the downfield targets, but the volume is there. Like I said, double-digit targets now in 2 of his last 3 games. He's gone over this in 2 of his last 3 games as well. I think this yardage prop is too low, even in this weird game that we're going to get on Thursday Night Football. So take the over on Noah Fant. I actually feel pretty good about that one.
Pierce, hit me with a player prop you like.
For the people that I put to sleep, let me give you a really ugly pick so now you can have a nightmare. Case Keenum over 0.5 interceptions at -130. We know his receiving core is banged up. Landry's out. Beckham's not really that good. But the bigger issue is his offensive line might not play tonight. So Case Keenum is being thrown into this game. He's not going to be able to really effectively use the play action with Jim Varney in the backfield. So he's going to be in a really tough spot with the secondary, everyone being in coverage. He's going to deal with a pass rush that's underperformed, but it's still in the top half of the league in terms of pressure rate and adjusted sack rate. And I just expect a guy that's thrown 47 interceptions in his career, about 1 for every 44 passes. He's going to throw about 30 passes tonight. But again, they're not just 30 regular passes. They're 30 passes without an offensive line being thrown into this game, without a rush attack. It's a real bad situation for Keenum. He's going over 0.5 interceptions.
Kenny, hit me with that player prop.
Yeah, this is why I have trust issues, Pierce, because I was all ready to talk about this fantastic Broncos secondary with Pat Surtain, the second coming in, Bryce Callahan having a good season, Kyle Fuller, Justin Simmons, Kareem Jackson. Yeah, this is a good secondary, and I definitely think that Case Keenum's going to throw an interception, so I like that at -140, 17th in interception rate are the Denver Broncos so far this season. And to Pierce's point, the last time we saw Case Keenum as a full-time starter in 2018, he had 15 picks in 16 games. In 2019 with the Washington football team, he didn't have as many interceptions, but he also didn't throw the football that much. So I like this, but if I have to pick a different prop here because Pierce stole it right out of my hands, my warm hands, because I've been holding a nice cup of coffee, I would definitely take the under 218.5 yards as well on Case Keenum because I just don't think this game is going to be very ugly, folks. Turnovers everywhere, no yardage games. So yeah, I like a fading Case Keenum tonight.
All right, let's go slate approved pick time, Pierce. What's your favorite bet on the board tonight?
Let's take an alternative line. The Broncos -3 in the first half will get you a +160. And if you listen to everything that these guys have said in the show, everyone likes the Broncos offense. And what the Broncos needed to do in this game is to strike early, strike fast, and you don't want the Browns and their backups to stick around and start to think that, hey, we've got a chance. And we know that Teddy Bridgewater likes to take deep shots. He's towards the top. I mean, we typically think of him as a conservative quarterback, but this year he's taking deep shots. And the Browns have allowed 14 touchdowns this year passing. That's towards the top. They've allowed almost the most intended air yards as well. So you can take deep shots against the secondary. You can strike early and take that early first half lead.
All right, Kenny, slate approved pick. What's your favorite bet on the board tonight?
Yeah, it's going to have to be Broncos minus 105 to win this football game. I also like Noah Fant anytime touchdown score at plus 230, echoing what Jeff said. I think he's going to have a good game, and I think around the red zone they like to get in the football. Very big athletic body. I think he should be able to tower over some of these weaker Browns cornerbacks. So I think that, Noah Fant to score, and also the Denver Broncos to win this football game. I just think that this is the Denver Broncos. At first they were overvalued, by the DraftKings sportsbook. Now they're undervalued. So I think we got to take the bait here.
All right, Jeff, where are you going?
Well, this feels like a trap because I'm going on the Broncos too. I'm just going to take the money line. I do like Pierce's idea of taking them, first half, but I'm not really. You just can't really figure this out. Why they're an underdog in this spot? I mean, it's not just the Case Keenum thing either. It's the running backs, which basically is their offense, and then it's the offensive line as well. And the defense isn't really playing that good. So I think the Broncos just have so many outs here. Even if the Bridgewater thing implodes for them, they've got still a better quarterback than probably than what the Browns are throwing out there this week. So the only fear here is Kevin Stefanski pulls a rabbit out of his hat, but it feels like the Browns season is kind of slowly twirling down the proverbial toilet here. I like the Broncos to eke this one out. Give me the money line.
All right, good stuff, guys. As always, thank you. On to MLB after this quick break. Only one game on the MLB slate tonight as the Sox are headed to Houston for Game 6 tomorrow night after a disappointing end at Fenway. But we've got DraftKings contributors Gary and Thorne, Nick Fryer, and RotoWire's Eric Halterman here to give their favorite plays from tonight's NLCS Game 5 between LA and Atlanta. Braves a win away from the World Series, guys. So first base, who are you captaining in a DFS showdown, Garion?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Austin Riley. Hasn't had the best series, but was red hot to finish out the season, had a 155 WRC plus after the All-Star break in the regular season. And I just like this Braves offense in general. We're going to get a lot of different arms going for the Dodgers today. There's a very good chance that Riley sees 4 different pitchers if he gets 4 plate appearances, 5 different pitchers if he gets 5 plate appearances. And he's someone who's just had a lot of success against both handednesses throughout his career. He's got a 146 WRC plus in right-on-right situations so far in 2021. And while he didn't hit lefties incredibly this season, he's got an 821 career OPS against southpaws. And he's just a powerful right-handed bat in an opposite-hand matchup against a potential left-handed pitcher. So I just don't really think there's a lot of weaknesses in Austin Riley's game. He's only priced in the mid $8,000 tier, so he's only just above $12K if he's captained. I just think he's a nice value of floor and value on this particular slate.
Nick, what do you think?
I'm with Gary on this one in that I like pulling from the Braves lineup, and I think tonight you got a lot of wiggle room because so many guys have been hitting well. Of course, Eddie Rosario has been, had a huge game, but I'm going to go with Freddie Freeman here, and I know he's a higher priced bat in this lineup tonight, but there are still three people ahead of him. You got Max Fried, Trey Turner, and Mookie Betts ahead of him. When you look at Freddie Freeman's postseason numbers too, he had a good nice night last night, 434 WOBA, 1015 OPS. He has a couple home runs in the postseason, and he's coming off back-to-back multi-hit games. And if you look at what he did to finish off the Braves, he had 22 DK fantasy points in that one too. So he can help the Braves do that tonight with the Dodgers tonight. I think that the Braves are going to come through.
All right, Eric, who's your captain?
I think general showdown strategy is if there's a pitcher who's likely to go deep, you better have a really good reason to not select him as captain. And I think Max Fried is going to go deep in this game. And I think he has to be the guy. I mean, pitchers just average so many more points than hitters. We're talking, it's like 17 points per game for Max Fried this season compared to 9 and a bit for the top batters on the slate. And he costs, about 600 more than Mookie Betts, I think, maybe 1,000 or 2 more than some of the other top bats. When there's a trustworthy pitcher at the top of the slate, I think you basically have to captain him. Max Fried is absolutely a trustworthy pitcher. In 2 playoff starts so far this postseason, he's been allowed to go 6 innings in both, allowed just 2 runs. I think he's walked 0, struck out 14. So he's been everything you want him to be. He really was, over the final 2 months of the regular season, too, a 1.46 ERA in 11 starts. And he's facing a Dodgers team that just lost not only a big bat, but a big right-handed bat in Justin Turner for the rest of the postseason. So tough for me to look away from Fried. I think the only reason would be if you want to avoid the crowd that the pitcher will inevitably select at the captain spot.
All right, Nick, where's the value play in DFS showdowns?
Well, I think Eddie Rosario is the obvious choice. I mean, he had a big night in Game 4. It's like 2 4-hit games in this series, double-digit DK fantasy points in 3 of the 4 games this series. But I'm actually going to go with Jock Peterson, which I never thought I'd go with Jock Peterson so much in a single season, Jesse. Maybe it's just because he's not wearing Dodger blue anymore. I'm not sure. But he has 3 home runs in the postseason. He's got 1 this series, double-digit DK fantasy points in 4 of his 8 postseason appearances. 2 of those 4 have come in this series. And then for the thing for Jock, too, I've mentioned it already earlier in the week. This is a chance for him. This is a revenge series for Jock Peterson. And I think when he has a chance now to help put the nail in the coffin tonight on the team that he wanted to play for, and they didn't want him back and it was his team, I'm going to go with Jock Peterson. I think he's going to come through and make them pay.
All right, Eric, where are you looking for value?
Yeah, I'll also make a passing reference to Eddie Rosario on the way to my actual guy, and that's Albert Pujols at 4,000. If you're paying up for the most expensive captain like I intend to here with Max Fried, you have to get the cheapest batters who are in the lineup, regardless of how good they are and where they hit in the order. And Albert Pujols actually against lefties has mashed this season. 146 WRC plus. He's hitting 294, 336, 603. And he'll hit not in a terrible spot, probably 5 or 6 or so against the left-hander. I know I said a bunch of good things about Max Fried. I still believe that 30 seconds later or however long it is. But Pujols is a minimum price player, and he's a real bat against lefties. And that's really all it takes in these showdown contests.
All right, Gary, and talk to me. Where's the value play in DFS showdowns?
Yeah, I completely agree with Eric. It's Albert Pujols at the absolute minimum, and I think he's actually probably going to end up hitting 5th in this lineup now that Justin Turner is unavailable, which is kind of crazy to think about considering just the career arc of Albert Pujols. But as Eric mentioned, he has crushed left-handed pitching so far this season. He's got a 303 isolated power against southpaws, so as strange as it is to say, he might have one of the higher ceilings of any Dodger bat when you factor in his raw power and his premium lineup placement, if we're just being honest and looking at things in a vacuum. So while, everyone's going to want to have Max Fried in a lineup, and it does feel weird to say a Dodger bat is a great value play, you got to play one Dodger. You can't play an entire lineup full of Braves, so it might as well be Albert Pujols.
All right, let's round third. Eric, hit me with your favorite player prop on the DK Sportsbook.
Yeah, so we don't have the full complement of them up at this stage in the morning. I think that's because the Dodgers don't have a confirmed starting pitcher. So we don't have Atlanta bats to choose from. And since I like Max Fried, I'm going to have to go with an under on a Dodger bat. And I like under half a hit for Corey Seager at plus 180. That suggests he's got about a 35% chance of going hitless. Corey Seager is a good contact hitter, but he's struggling this postseason, hitting just 205, and he'll get the platoon disadvantage against a pitcher who I really like in Max Fried. So I think of the ones that we're seeing at the moment, I think Corey Seager to go hitless plus 180, you're getting a pretty good deal for something that has a pretty real chance of happening.
All right, Garion, what do we think? What's your favorite player prop on the DK Sportsbook?
Yeah, if we're just picking between Dodger props here, I will ride the narrative. I'll just fully embrace it and say Mookie Betts is the greatest elimination game player of all time. He's 13 for 24 in the 6 elimination games he has played since joining the Los Angeles Dodgers. He's also just one of the best hitters in baseball and someone with a career 821 OPS against left-handed pitching. So if Mookie Betts is going to get 5 plate appearances in this game, which I think there's a reasonable chance that happens, I think he can go over 1.5 total bases at plus 105. Or if you want to take him over 1.5 hits at plus 180, I know that's a juicier number. I would prefer the total bets prop, but either one of those at plus money seems pretty good considering the damage Mookie's done so far in these games that matter most.
All right, Nick, what's your favorite player prop?
I'm with Gary on the Mookie Betts prop, even though I didn't come through last night. He's had quite a few multiple hit games this season. This postseason, he only has a couple extra base hits, but he is great in elimination games. But the other one, I know we're talking all Dodgers here because the Braves stuff isn't up, but we know we're going to see some home run props come up a little bit later, and I'm going to double down on Jock Peterson tonight. You look at his postseason numbers. He has like 24 plate appearances, but he's still done really well. And again, I believe this guy's going to be swinging out of his short side. So as a value play, he works because one home run is going to come through and it makes a big difference. And then tonight, I do think he's going to be looking for that bomb to try and send a statement across the other side of the diamond.
All right, Gary, take us home with your favorite bet on the sports book tonight. Could be anything here.
I'm just going to take the Braves team total over 3.5 runs. It just seems a run too low. I understand the Dodgers have one of the best bullpens in baseball, and statistically they were the best bullpen in baseball across the second half of the season. But this is just one of those spots where the Braves are hot right now, and for as many holes as the Braves have in their offense, they strike out a little bit too much. They've got a lot of guys who just have low contact rates. They hit home runs. Their isolated power has been high all season long, and that's the kind of instant offense that you're looking for with a prop this low. So at minus 120, I think the Braves to do something they've done in each of the past 4 games, I like it a lot.
All right, Nick, what about you?
I'm in lockstep with Gary on this one, over 3.5 runs tonight. I mean, this one seems like it's a no-brainer. And you look at what, when you have Freddy Freeman doing so well, I know Rosario's making the headlines right now and Jock Peterson, as much as I've been talking about him, when you have a guy like Freddy Freeman coming up big in the postseason, he's your best hitter. You can rely on, that offense is going to be consistent night to night. And I know they didn't do quite as much against the Brewers, but a little bit better pitching. The Dodgers are a little bit more depleted right now, and just I don't have any faith in their pitching staff going into this one. So I think they'll comfortably score 4 runs tonight at least.
Eric, favorite bet on the sportsbook tonight?
I'm going to stick with a nice and simple money line Braves plus 125. I think they have a good shot of closing the series here tonight. A few reasons for that. One is that every playoff game is closer to a coin flip than I think most people think. The fact that the Braves are up 3-1 in the NLCS over the team that everybody kind of thought was the most talented heading into the postseason is evidence of that. Also, these aren't the Dodgers we saw throughout the second half without Max Muncy and Justin Turner. Their talent gap over Atlanta isn't as big as I think people might have it in their heads. And finally, I just think Max Fried is the real deal. He's had an excellent second half, strikes out enough guys, doesn't walk anybody, keeps the ball on the ground. I would much rather have a very reliable starter going 6 or 7 innings than trying to piece together a bullpen game. So I think Atlanta should be more or less 50-50 here and not at plus 125 odds.
All right, thanks, guys. That's all she wrote for baseball. Quick break here, and then we're going to compare salaries in the NBA. The Sweat will be right back. to DraftKings contributor Matt Mazelman and RotoWire's Nick Whalen. They are here for NBA pick and roll. So we're picking between two players on the NBA slate tonight. Let's start with Mavs versus Hawks. So which point guard are you going to be rolling with? You got Doncic at 10-6 or Trae Young at 9,100. Matt, who do you like?
Honestly, I like both of them a lot. Like, these are probably my two favorite point guards on tonight's slate. So to me, the field is going to be broken up into three tiers for point guards. Steph Curry is going to be everyone's favorite. And then I think you get lower ownership on both Doncic and Young. And then below that, you could play Kyle Lowry, who I think no one is going to play. So that's kind of how I see it. But to me, the best combination of just not being overly popular and having massive upside is Luka Doncic. He's the favorite for MVP this year, I think rightfully so. And if more people are going to play Curry because Curry's a bit cheaper, I think Doncic is the better play. So that's the guy I'm going with.
All right, Nick, what do you think? Are you going to pay up for Doncic, save some money with Trae Young?
I think Matt's on the right track regarding, the roster ship rates tonight. I think that 10-6 number maybe makes some people back off of Luka Doncic. And obviously you have a great option to pivot to in Steph Curry, who, very likely will bounce back after a really rough shooting night against the Lakers on Tuesday. I like Trae Young here, though. You're saving $1,500 with Trae relative to Doncic. Not quite as much statistical upside. Obviously, there are more options on that Atlanta Hawks roster. Trae Young doesn't necessarily have to do everything, whereas Doncic does. But I want to pocket that $1,500 and I think spend it up on probably one of the next guys we're about to talk about.
All right, yeah, Bucks Heat. All right, so who are you paying up for? Giannis at 10-3, or are you going to save a little, go Jimmy Butler at 8,300? It sounds like you might be paying up here, Nick.
It does seem that way, yeah. So after saving money at point guard, I think I will redistribute those funds toward the Greek Freak at 10-3. I was remarkably impressed by what we saw from Giannis, who you never know really what you're going to get on rig night. Sometimes the teams come out a little bit sluggish. You're kind of resting on your laurels. We saw the complete opposite from Giannis. He was by far the most aggressive player on the floor. It took like 12 or 13 shots, I think, in the first quarter alone. He was all over the glass. And that game ended up kind of being a laugher in the second half. So maybe this one's a little bit closer. These teams have historically, over the last few years, played each other really closely. I think Giannis's minutes totals probably climb up a little bit in this one. And obviously there is some history between these teams. I think Giannis enjoys taking it to the Miami Heat, which of course clipped the Bucks a couple of years ago in the playoffs. Milwaukee got its revenge last year. I think Giannis keeps it rolling after that huge night on Tuesday.
All right, Matt, where you going?
So I'm kind of on the same page. To me, though, the answer here, really, it depends who else is in your lineup already. So if you're playing Bam Adebayo, I know we're going to get there on centers. Maybe you don't play Jimmy Butler then because they kind of do the same stuff, and it's going to be a little bit difficult for them both to have great games. But if you like Middleton and Holiday, then playing Giannis too, it's the same problem. So if I have to pick, I'm leaning Giannis. I think finding the salary for him should be a priority. He is underpriced. Giannis could justifiably be $12K player. He's the best fantasy player in the NBA. And I think pairing him with Luka Doncic isn't going to be a thing that most people are doing because it is hard to afford both of them. So I don't dislike Butler or anything like that. I just think Giannis is a guy that is always worth paying up for. And he is a little bit underpriced in my mind.
All right, Matt, Clippers at Warriors. Paul George or Steph Curry?
I like George a bit more. So kind of what I was saying before is that Curry is going to be the most popular spend-up option. And I think less people play Doncic, Trae Young, Kyle Lowry. More people play Curry. So from a contrarian perspective, maybe you play one of those guys instead of Steph. And at the same time, I think Jimmy Butler will be more popular than George at the small forward position because he's $1,400 cheaper. So I actually really like Paul George. $9,700 might seem like a lot for him, but without Kawhi Leonard there, we've seen Paul George have massive upside. It's not that he's a safe play at that price because if he only puts up 40 fantasy points or so, it's not enough for that price tag, but I think 60 is a real possibility. We could have a game where George just shoots the lights out and has a monster fantasy performance. So the ceiling is definitely there for him, and I do think he'll be a little less popular than some of the other guys up near the top.
Nick, Paul George appealing to you?
He is. I do think there's a good chance that Steph bounces back. So, maybe we get burned on this one. But I'm a huge fan of Paul George in season-long leagues and DFS this season. It's almost a little too obvious with Kawhi Leonard out. But, 2-3 seasons ago when he was in OKC, Paul George was the number 2 overall fantasy player in season-long leagues. And obviously that translates well to DFS. We haven't really seen him in that kind of role, unless it's a night that Kawhi Leonard rests. So, long term, he hasn't been the man in a few years. And I think he's ready to return to that. I was kind of hoping we'd get maybe a little bit of a friendlier price on opening night, 9,700. It is a steep price to pay, but I think he's going to be in a really good spot all year, and I think it starts tonight. This Warriors defense, looked a little vulnerable against the Lakers team that was kind of clunky on offense. They still got well into the one teens in that game. I think the Clippers can do the same, and I think Paul George can exploit that Warriors defense.
All right, a couple good center options to pick from. You got Adebayo, Lopez, Draymond, Capella. So who are you going with at center, Nick?
Yeah, I liked Lopez on opening night. He didn't have a huge game, but I wouldn't mind going back to that well if you want to save some money. The Bucks are still without Bobby Portis. They're still banged up in the front court, so I think we maybe see a slightly increased role for Lopez. But regardless of price, my favorite play is Bam Adebayo. I think 7,600 is actually a pretty nice price for Adebayo. That's like over $1,000 cheaper than he was toward the end of last season. Pat Riley has been hyping him up all preseason, saying he's ready to take another step forward. Obviously, Pat Riley is biased in that scenario. You have to keep that in mind. But Adebayo just gets better and better each year, and I wouldn't be surprised if he has another step to take.
All right, Matt, what do we think? Who are you going with at center?
Yeah, so I've already mentioned that I want to try to pay up for Luka and pay up for Giannis and Paul George. It's very hard to afford all those guys. And the most popular center tonight, I think, will be $5,000 Ivica Zubac. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to go way off the board and just pick his backup, because if Zubac gets in foul trouble, there's a guy on the Clippers now who could benefit tremendously from that, and that's Isaiah Hartenstein. He's only $3,100, and I think he should be a rotation guy for them this year. So it's not that I don't like Bam and I don't like Clint Capella. I think those are good options too. It's just that if you're paying up at other spots, you need to save somewhere, and paying down for Hartenstein, I think, will be super contrarian strategy because most people are already looking to the starting center for the Clippers. So I think that could be one of the best value plays on this slate from the cheaper range on a slate where there's only 3 games. There really aren't that many guys to save with.
Yeah, Matt, we talked about some of the bigger name guys, but who's your pick of the rest of the guys that we didn't talk about?
So I think I'm going to stick with Kyle Lowry. We mentioned him very briefly, but if Butler is popular and Bam is also, the easiest way for those guys to have bad games is if someone else on their team does really well and just takes over the usage and scores a bunch, and then Butler and Bam maybe just don't do as much. And Kyle Lowry is priced in a range at 8,100 where I just don't think anyone wants to play him. You have Drew Holiday for cheaper, and then you can pay up for Curry, you can pay up for Doncic, Trae Young. Like, Kyle Lowry could be sub 10% tonight. So to me, like, for GPPs, there's only 3 games, hard to find someone that's super unique, but Kyle Lowry is a really good basketball player, and I think he will be as unique. Maybe not quite as I think he is, but he should be 10% or less.
Nick, who's your pick?
I'll just throw out a few names that I like at their prices. I think Chris Middleton is still a very good deal at 7,300. I thought he looked great on opening night. I think John Collins at 6,800, if you're kind of looking for a mid-tier forward option, is a good deal. Bogdan Bogdanovic in Atlanta at 6,100. Nemanja Bjelica down at 4,600, who was like the second best player on the floor at times for the Warriors the other night. He had a double-double against the Lakers, looked like a really, really good fit in that Warriors offense. And then I think Tyler Hero at 5,200, who I really, really like as a breakout guy this season, had a fantastic preseason. I think 5,200 is going to look like maybe a laughable price in a few weeks for him.
All right, good stuff, guys. So we've covered NBA, we've covered MLB. We're going to put the show on ice next and talk NHL. Stay tuned. Our esteemed NHL panel is here, RotoWire's AJ Scholes and Paul Bruno, and it's time for NHL Opening Face-Off. So we're choosing between the top options on the 10-game slate tonight. We're going to start with a goal-scoring prop that you like tonight. So who's lighting the lamp this evening, AJ?
Well, I was going to look at Alex Ovechkin at plus 100 even money here before today's news that Jonathan Bernier is going to be out with a lower body injury. That means the Caps are going up against Scott Wedgwood, who has a career 3.07 goals against average in 40 NHL appearances and is 1-1-3 with a .896 save percentage in 5 prior clashes with the Capitals. I think Alex Ovechkin is pretty much a lock to score tonight. I'd also consider looking at Detroit's Tyler Bertuzzi, who has 5 goals in 3 games to start the year. He's returning plus 195 value on the DK Sportsbook. I know it's just a 2-game sample size, but his opponent, the Flames, are allowing 4 goals per game to start the year. So for me, it's Ovechkin for sure, and then Bertuzzi is a good way to get some more value.
All right, Paul, who's your lock to score?
I'm looking at the Colorado-Florida game, and there's lots of high-end talent there, and I'm going to take the lesser of a couple of options in the $195 to $200 range. I'm looking at Jonathan Huberdeau and maybe Mikko Rantanen. For the Avs tonight, I expect a lot of goals in that game, and those are 2 guys that won't cost you as much as some of the other line mates that they play with, so that's where I'm looking.
All right, Paul, what's a puck line or money line that you like tonight?
I'm going to double down on that high expectation for a high game total for Colorado, Florida tonight, Jesse. In the head-to-head, I typically go to the alternate total goal line in a matchup like this, and I'm going to go as high as over 7.5 goals for the win on a 210 bet. The offenses are just too loaded here, and the goaltending has been a little suspect on both sides too. And I have a similar breakdown of the San Jose Ottawa tilt, so I go back to the alternate game score to go over 7.5 for a 235 payoff there as well.
AJ, puck line or money line you like tonight? Where are you going?
Look, if you're watching us right now, pull up your computer, head over to DK Sportsbook, the app, whatever, and get Washington cover the puck line at plus 190 right now, because I don't think it's going to stay there with this goaltending news. Additionally, you'll find Colorado. You're not going to find them as the underdog too often this season, but you can get them at even money plus 100 on the money line against the Panthers. They're going to get Gabriel Landeskog back from suspension. This will be the first time that they're going to have Landeskog and McKinnon going together. So to get some positive value on the Avs, that's something you won't see a lot the rest of the year.
All right, what's the best value wing or center for DFS tonight, AJ? What do we think?
Well, I would recommend targeting the Hurricanes tonight. You consider all the problems Montreal has had right now. Through 4 games this year, they've allowed 3.75 goals per game. To that end, you can snag Jesperi Kotkaniemi at 3,400 tonight. He slides into a first-line role with Sebastian Aho and Teuvo Teravainen. He hasn't found the score sheet this year, but playing with those 2 big dogs, I think he definitely should. And honestly, I would just stack this whole line tonight.
All right, Paul, value wing or center for DFS tonight?
I'm going to look at Bo Horvat tonight, $5,000. He's locked into a top 6 role in first string power play duty for a club that should be a contender for their division title. He faces a Chicago team that's looking a little bit awkward after an 0-3-1 start. I like the Canucks structure much better than the Hawks at the moment, so I see value in the Canucks captain this evening. Ryan Nugent Hopkins costs a heck of a lot less than McDavid and Draisaitl tonight, yet he's going to play a lot of minutes with both of them on the special teams and at least one of them on a regular shift. So I don't get the price tag of $4,200. I'm locked in on that easily. That's maybe the best pick on the board. He was in that range last game too when I talked about him in this segment, and he paid off big. I say wash, rinse, repeat tonight. Tim Stützle against the Sharks at $4,600. That's also a steal. He's arguably the most skilled player on the Sens, and tonight we'll be looking to take advantage of a suspect defense from the Sharks on a night when the home side gets a couple of key players back in their lineup. They're going to be feeling good, and he's going to roll. Anthony Mantha, it might be called OV Light in Washington before too long. He's $4,500 against New Jersey. I have high hopes for him this year. He's underrated playing in Ovechkin's shadow, but I know he has all the skills, and he's slated to play on the second line and get top minutes on the first line power play as well. He has all the right skills to have a big year, and I think he has a solid play tonight.
All right, Paul, who's the best DFS option in goal tonight?
Well, I like what AJ touched on in the Carolina-Montreal game. Freddie Anderson at $7,800. That's a steal when you know he's been really hot in his career against Montreal with a stunning record win-loss 10-4-2. Most of that's with the Maple Leafs, I am glad to say. And the Habs with that 0-4 record, what's better than that? Maybe an 0-5 mark. So I'm really pulling for the visitors tonight. This season, Freddie's already got 2 wins under his belt with his new team, and I think the Hurricanes are going to be in control and the contention for the Eastern Conference title. Of course, the fans will be up for this one, and I think the easiest prop is how many boos will Kasperi Kotkaniemi get? More than 5? I think that's a lock. And so that's the surest bet on my slate. This may be the extent of the fan engagement this evening, as I expect the Canes to roll over the Habs. Freddie gets the W this evening.
All right, what about you, AJ? Who's the best DFS option for goalie tonight?
I agree with Paul and Freddie Anderson. I think he's the best option. But one alternative, if you want to pay down a little bit, is John Gibson for Anaheim at 6,800. We know the Jets are for sure going to be without Blake Wheeler. And then today it came out this morning that Mark Scheifele is on the COVID protocol list. There's still a chance he could play. He's had 1 negative test. He'll need 1 more. We won't know closer to puck drop. So it's a bit of a dicey situation. You're going to want to be nearby your computer or app to potentially pivot here. But I do think John Gibson at 6,800 might make sense if both Scheifele and Wheeler are out of action.
All right, good stuff, guys. That's going to do it for hockey. We have one more segment to go here on The Sweat. We're talking Week 8 in college football when we return. We are into Week 8 of the college football season, and here to give us his best bets for said Week 8 is DraftKings contributor Julian Edlow. He's here. He's ready. Jules, unranked Clemson is an underdog on the road versus Pittsburgh. The Panthers are 3-point favorites. Do you like Pitt to cover at home here?
Well, if you're a value bettor, this one makes you a little bit sick because the look-ahead line here before the season started was Clemson minus 17.5. And now they are underdogs in this game. But I will take Pitt -3 at home. They are just clearly the better team. If Clemson was going to turn its season around, it was going to be out of the bye playing against Syracuse, who has a dreadful offense. And they just scraped by with a 17-14 road victory. Yeah, they won, but they were, 2 touchdown favorites in that game. So you look at this game, you say, well, Clemson's still good on defense. They are. They have a top 25 or so defense. Pitt's right there with a top 30 defense. So slight edge to Clemson defensively. Offensively, Clemson is right down at the bottom of the barrel out of 130 teams. They're well down into the hundreds. At the bottom of that list near your Navies, your Armies that run their wishbone option offenses. They can't pass the ball. Meanwhile, Pittsburgh, top 10 offense, top 10, top 5 passing offense with Kenny Pickett, an outside Heisman candidate. Pitt's at home. They should be up for this game. Clemson knows its season is over. Maybe it's a trap. Maybe it's not the best value, but I'm all in on the Panthers here.
All right, 10th ranked Oregon on the road visiting Chip Kelly's UCLA Bruins. UCLA, the favorites by 2.5 points with a game total of 60.5. So do you like the Ducks to get the road upset in this one?
I do not. And it's one of those ones where, if you're watching the game on the broadcast, like they might be speaking about this as UCLA, an unranked UCLA team beating Oregon as the upset, but you see the number right there. And you've got an unranked team at home favored against a ranked team. That is usually a spot that you want to circle when you have, your average Joe betting and saying, oh my God, I can get points, I can get plus money with Oregon on the money line. But Oregon has slowed significantly since that massive upset against Ohio State. And they're dealing with a lot of injuries. There's a reason why. Meanwhile, you've got UCLA that's running pretty good. I do like them on the money line. I'm going to take them on the money line just to get this win at home against a top 10 team.
All right, Alabama favored at home by 25 points against Tennessee. I mean, that's too big of a spread, right, Jules?
It was 27.5. I'm surprised it came down. Look, Alabama got upset big time a couple of Saturday nights ago, lost me one of my bigger bets of the season on the first half spread. We came right back on them last week and played the first half spread, Alabama, and it got there pretty easily. They wound up winning the game 49-9 too. Alabama is known for taking its foot off the gas because it's always number one. It knows it's going to be fine. It knows it's going to be in the playoff. So you don't have to necessarily get these massive margins of victory like other teams would need to get in. But now Alabama has that loss, and Georgia doesn't, Oklahoma doesn't. So Alabama kind of needs to start winning with some margin here. So I don't mind the 14.5 on the first half line, or just going ahead and laying the full game with Alabama. I'll probably be on that 14 or so for the first half, come out hot once again. Alabama's, 6-1 first half ATS, so they've been better there than they have the full game.
All right, 18th ranked NC State, road favorites in Miami with a 51.5 game total in this one. So what are you looking at in this one? Anything stand out to you?
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Wolfpack, lay a few points on the road here. Miami covered last week against North Carolina, had a shot to tie the game to go to overtime, elected to try and go for the win and didn't get it. So I am kind of afraid of a home team playing with house money that doesn't have anything to lose this season. They're clearly, done at 2-4. But NC State's a really good team. They have a really good defense. I think that they're going to fare well in this game. UNC, who Miami was playing last week, has been terrible on defense. So I think that's kind of the difference in this week. I think that the Wolfpack will be able to get some stops against the Hurricanes and kind of grind this one out on the road and cover the 3.
All right, Jules, college football playoff rankings come out on November 2nd. So let's take a look at some of the futures for teams to make the playoffs. So what's a playoff future that you're looking at here before the rankings come out?
Yeah, Ohio State is right there essentially as a pick'em to get into this thing. And they have the loss to Oregon. But if they don't lose again, I don't know why they would not get in. Georgia's going to get in. Looks like they'll run the table, and then we'll see what happens against Alabama in the SEC championship game. Oklahoma will get in if it doesn't loses. Cincinnati becomes an interesting question, but if Ohio State doesn't lose, they're going to get it. And they've got that big game next week against Penn State, who is a top 10 team this year, who looks good. But I don't think that means that they're going to come to Ohio State and really threaten to win that game. I think Ohio State's been woken up. They've looked fantastic, the Buckeyes, ever since losing to Oregon. So I think this is a team that, was sitting around minus 200 before the season to get in, and now we're getting some really good value on them to likely just go ahead and run the table and be right where we thought they would be.
All right, good stuff, Julian. That is a show, everybody. Our Madden slate is starting at noon with the Texans at Jets. The slate is on at 5 p.m. with Kaufman and Reed. They're going to be talking Thursday Night Football, so make sure you tune in for that. And we'll be back tomorrow morning at 11 a.m.